I have seen companies bigger than Reliance and TCS fall by more than 60% in 1 hour. Yes.
So margin of safety concept that you'll only buy when you see that there is enough room for safety, right?
Exactly.
Do you hedge? Do you average in loss?
I think it's a very controversial company and a lot of people have very differing opinions on it. That's why I've picked this stock to talk about as an example.
बहुत commoditized business नहीं है financials का. पैसा लेना है और lend कर देना है और risk manage करना है.
Yes.
तो इसमें unique क्या होता है financials में?
If you look at 2008 financial crisis or other crises that have happened across the world, why don't Indian markets get affected?
हेलो नमस्कार, एक और फेस टू फेस में आपका स्वागत. मैं हूं आपका होस्ट विवेक बजाज. दोस्तों, इन्वेस्टिंग, ट्रेडिंग, ऑप्शंस ट्रेडिंग, टेक्निकल एनालिसिस, फंडामेंटल एनालिसिस, वॉरेन बफेट, चार्ली मंगर, रमेश दमानी जी, इतनी सारी बातें हम सब करते हैं फेस टू फेस में. हर वीडियो के अंदर में कुछ ना कुछ बात होती है जो हमारे दिल को छू जाती है. दिल, दिमाग. फेस टू फेस के इस वीडियो में भी कई बातें आपके दिल को छुएंगी, बिकॉज इन्वेस्टिंग के बारे में हम काफ़ी डीप डिस्कशन करने वाले हैं. किससे करने वाले हैं पता है? 28 साल के फंड मैनेजर से. अरे आप में से कुछ लोगों को लग रहा होगा, अरे 28 साल का फंड मैनेजर मुझे क्या सिखाएगा. चलिए आपके लिए एक और बात बोल देता हूँ. 28 साल का फंड मैनेजर, ये यूएस बेस है और यूएस में फंड मैनेजर है. अभी भी नहीं, एक्साइटमेंट नहीं हुआ. चलो एक और बात बताता हूँ. 14 साल की उम्र से जो इन्वेस्टमेंट कर रहा है, अब आपको एक्साइटमेंट हुआ है, अब आपको मन कर रहा है कि यहाँ आप भी सीखना चाहते हैं इनसे, जो हमको इन्वेस्टिंग के बारे में अच्छी अच्छी बातें बताएंगे, रेलेवेंट बातें बताएंगे. मैं इनसे मिला, है यूएस के बट कलकत्ता आए हुए थे. ऐसे मुलाकात हुई थी, मगर मैंने पहली मुलाकात में कह दिया कि यार फेस टू फेस करना होगा, बिकॉज सीखना आपसे बहुत कुछ है, बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है आप. तो आप भी सीखिएगा मुझसे, मैं भी इनके साथ सीख रहा हूँ. So let's call for this face-to-face Vatsal. Hello, welcome.
Thank you so much, Vivek ji. This is मतलब बहुत surreal है मेरे लिए, क्योंकि genuinely I have seen many videos over the years आपका on YouTube, and my father, he's been subscribing and has taken many courses of your platform, since last 3 years. And I can definitely say that, what you have built and the knowledge you are sharing has helped many budding investors and emerging managers, including me. So thank you.
Super. Thank you. And I'm sure your father was very proud of you that today you are part of Face2Face family.
Yes.
Lovely. So Vatsal, आप कलकत्ता के हैं, तो थोड़ा आपके बारे में जानेंगे. आप 28 साल के हैं, तो जैसा ही मैंने कहा, एक इम्प्रेशन दिया लोगों को कि कई लोग बिलीव नहीं करेंगे कि 28 साल का फंड मैनेजर कैसे हो सकता है और क्या ही पता होगा इसको, है ना. बट मुझे ना 28 साल वालों से बहुत रिस्पेक्ट है. Because I think what a 28-year-old are doing now, हम लोग 38 साल में सोच रहे थे कि हम शायद ये करेंगे. तो वत्सल, एवरीथिंग अबाउट यू. कॉलेज कहाँ से किया, यूएस कैसे पहुँच गए, यूएस में फंड मैनेजर कैसे बन गए, और फिर उसके बाद इन्वेस्टिंग आप कैसे करते हैं, कोर फ्यू एग्जांपल्स कि किस में आपने अच्छा किया, किस में आपने बुरा किया.
100%. Yes. So Vivek ji, yes, born and brought up in Calcutta. So family, परिवार हमेशा कैलकाटा में रहा है. We are come from a middle class Marwadi Jain family, and investing was always like in my blood. And like went to St. Xavier's Collegiate School, went to undergrad in Shri Ram College of Commerce, majored in economics. Investing was something जो हमेशा काफ़ी naturally आया, and my father was the one who introduced me to it. So I remember this was around 2009-ish. I was around 14-15 years old. And Papa was like, take मतलब 50,000 रुपए लो and pick a stock. तो उस समय मेरे को लगा यार कि स्पाइस जेट बहुत ज़्यादा गिरा हुआ है. मतलब एयरलाइंस इतना है, एसेट वैल्यू इतना है. इट वॉज ट्रेडिंग एट अराउंड 14 रुपीज़ a share. So I bought 50,000 का around then, and in 4-5 months it shot up. And I was like, अरे वाह, ये तो game is amazing, and I think I immediately got like hooked to it. And always tracked markets very closely. Indian markets of course start वहाँ से हुआ. Then after college basically I took a gap year. I did UPSC. So I sat for the civil services, which I think was an amazing experience because it has helped me, continues to help me as an investor and as a stock picker today, because you read so widely. You try to figure out patterns, you try to see if you can connect things, and you have a knowledge of current affairs. But anyway, UPSC didn't happen. I went to Yale University, did my master's in economics there, and then I got a job with the World Bank. I worked there for 2 years, did a lot of microeconomics. Then after 2 years, I went across the street to the International Monetary Fund. There I was a macroeconomist for 2 years. And the way I got into professional investing or professional fund management is, 2024, I attended my first ever Berkshire Hathaway meetings in Omaha, Nebraska.
Lovely.
So I went from Washington, DC to Omaha, and it was just a mesmerizing world. There were only fund managers, only stock pickers. And wahan pe I actually met my current boss at Ridgewood Investments where I work. So he was also there. And I met him and we connected a lot, and then he offered me a role at the firm. So it purely happened through networking in Omaha, so to say. And I would highly recommend everybody to go there. A magical place, and it turned my life for the better. And मैं तो लोगों को ऐसे बोलता हूँ कि आपका जो फ्लाइट एंड होटल का खर्चा है टू गो टू ओमाहा, आपको जो स्टॉक आइडियाज मिलेंगे दैट विल मोर देन कॉम्पेंसेट फॉर द होटल एंड फ्लाइट का खर्चा एज वेल. सो हाँ, दैट इज द स्टोरी, विवेक जी, हाउ आई गॉट journey so far. And this, I absolutely love doing this, love picking stocks, US markets and Indian markets. And just been enjoying it.
My God, ये पूरा पैराग्राफ इंट्रोडक्शन में मुझे लग रहा था कि एक कितना साल का एक्सपीरियंस वाला बंदा बोल रहा है. And finally we realized that you are just 28. My God. चलिए, good. So I know I will have a lot of questions for you. But presentation को base रखते हैं सामने.
Yes.
And I will keep on asking you stupid questions in the middle so that all of us understand you very closely. ठीक है? तो आगे बढ़ते हैं.
Yeah. So currently, Vivek ji, as I said, I work at Ridgewood Investments. So we're a team of 4 people running about 3,000 crores in the US markets. And I really believe in equities as an asset class, and 100% of my savings, my wife's savings, are in equities. And really, I feel I live and breathe stocks. So it's even when I'm in my free time, I just love researching companies. Sunday बैठे हैं, कुछ करने को नहीं है, बस लैपटॉप खोल लिया, रिसर्च कर रहे हैं, कोई अर्निंग्स कॉल का ट्रांसक्रिप्ट देख लिया, Warren Buffett के कोई videos देख लिए, lot of different fund managers, just see their videos. So that's sort of on the investing side. And thankfully, last 5 years, India and US markets have been well. So I've been able to outperform the indices by a meaningful number. So hope to continue that track record. And I'm just very passionate about it, and comes naturally to me.
Lovely. So I mean, your passion is now a profession.
Yeah.
So it's a magical combination, huh? And that's where the results are so magical. You generated this is your result?
Yes.
So you generated a return of 34% CAGR in US.
Yes.
And Indian market investment, we have generated a CAGR of 27% in the last 5 years, which I think is outperforming a lot of fund managers in India. Very good. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
अब ये किया कैसे बताओ?
So I would say, Vivek ji, over the years, I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've lost a lot of money as well. What I've come to realize after gorging lot of videos आपके platform से, seeing a lot of videos of Warren Buffett, lot of investors like Chuck Akre, Pat Dorsey, I've come to realize कि you only need to focus on high quality businesses. So my investing philosophy is very simple. I try to look for companies that have high return on invested capital, and then they're aggressively reinvesting back their cash flows at that high ROIC. And the main thing then is, the difficult part is कि these types of companies आपको हमेशा expensive मिलेंगी. So people like me, I love when I wait for market crashes.
Achha.
So I get very excited when a stock crashes or a market or the overall market crashes. And ये मेरे को US में सीखने को मिला कि so US में there is no concept of upper circuit, lower circuit. You know, I have seen companies bigger than Reliance and TCS fall by more than 60% in 1 hour. Yes, I have seen that happen as well in the US. So what that taught me is that if you are patient, you will always get very excellent quality businesses trading at cheap because there is a certain correction or a certain market reaction that happens to that. And we'll go deeper into that. But that is broadly my investing philosophy कि कचरा पे focus मत करो, certain industries पे focus मत करो. There are 1001 ways to make money. I just want to figure out 2 or 3 ways to make money. You know, even a Virat Kohli will get to 10,000 runs. Tendulkar has gone to 10,000 runs. Many people will get there and they have their own different ways. Stock market, you can generate good returns in multiple different ways. The way I have zeroed in on for now, and again, the beauty of this field is that you're constantly always learning and you have to reinvent yourself from time to time, is that I only focus on 50 to 60 high quality companies in the US and India. And like a sniper, I'm just waiting to pick them up when they are cheap and or when they fall, and then try to subjectively assess jo fall hai, is it due to an actual business impairment or a material loss in the business or a deterioration in the quality, or is it sentimental or macro factors which will not really matter after 6 months or so. And the last thing I would say is that I am a very long-term investor. So even as an example, the Bajaj Finance shares that I bought in 2017, I still continue to hold them. I haven't sold a single share, and I hopefully won't sell a single share even after the next 10 years. So I'm extremely long-term, extremely patient. एंड मेरे साथ तो ऐसा होता है विवेक जी कि यू नो कभी कभार यूएस में बैठे बैठे मेरे यहाँ पे इंडिया में जो ब्रोकरेज है दे कॉल मी सेइंग कि यू नो इट्स बीन 6 months you haven't logged into your account, you'll have to reset your password. So it's like I tend to be, I actually try to practice this long-termism. And what I've learned from all the good fund managers is that long term is a solid way to make money, and it suits my temperament and it suits my personality as well.
तो थोड़ा मैं एग्जिट पे बात करूंगा, बट एक बार आपका फिलोसॉफी देख लेते हैं, बिकॉज लॉन्ग टर्म वैसे बहुत अच्छा है, इट्स अ गुड नैरेटिव ऑल्सो. अभी बहुत कुछ आप कर सकते हैं लॉन्ग टर्म बोल के कि लॉन्ग टर्म रखो, बट फाइनली ऐसे कई बिजनेसेस हैं, या मे बी इन टुडेज वर्ल्ड ऑफ AI डिस्ट्रप्शन इज गिवन, तो जहाँ पर आपको दिख जाता है कि देयर इज समथिंग रॉन्ग व्हिच इज गोइंग ऑन, so do you exit then? But I'll park that for the last.
Sure, yeah.
After I've gone through your process entirely. Yes. So you can, should I help you with the presentation?
Yeah, I think you can move to the next.
I'll just move to the next one,
Yeah. So, Vivek ji, I think one thing that I think I am a better investor, and I'll continue to become a better investor by learning from our mistakes. And what happened is around 2011-12 May, like my father, he lost a lot of money in HDIL, Ashok Buildcon, Reliance Power and stuff. And that left a very deep emotional scar in me. And I realized that this game is a double-edged sword. You know, pehle SpiceJet se excited, okay, you know, I was like, arey, there's so much upside. But seeing my father lose money really scarred me a lot. And I tried to, उससे होता वही है कि now when I analyze a stock or now when I look at a stock, I'm very, very focused on the downside. Similarly, I have personally lost like around $50,000 in 2021 May. What happened is a lot of emerging tech companies IPO'd in the US markets. They went up and then they crashed as soon as the Fed started raising interest rates. So I invested in a company called Cloudflare. I love the company. It's a fantastic company. I've met the CEO personally. I have his WhatsApp and all. But what I learned from that is even amazing companies, you can burn your hands in if you buy at the wrong price. So it was like the perfect tuition fee I could give to learn. So now I'm very, very focused on, even if it's a great company, you cannot blindly buy it. You cannot blindly just buy an Asian Paints or a Pidilite at any price, as an example. You really need to be very sensitive about valuations. And as a fund manager, I think given that we are entrusted to manage people's money, we have to really care about downside protection and downside risk. And I think Warren Buffett has the classic, like somebody asked him, you know, what are the rules of investing? And he said, there are only 2 rules. Rule number 1, never lose money. Rule number 2, never forget rule number 1. And it's very simple, but it's very profound and deep. तो मैं वही try करता हूँ कि, how can we protect money on the downside?
Okay, interesting. So margin of safety concept that you'll only buy when you see that there is enough room for safety, right?
Exactly.
Do you hedge?
I do not hedge at all. I do not do any options, futures, derivatives, leverage, nothing yet. I don't know, maybe in the future I might, but abhi it's very simple, boring, picking good stocks and just seeing the flowers grow.
Okay. Do you average in loss?
Yes.
In those stocks?
Yes. So that is a very interesting question. And I think it's at the heart of also my investing philosophy is, Buffett says that he gets euphoric when the stocks he buys goes down. And he has a very simple analogy, right? Ki आज we are drinking this coffee as an example. ये अगर 10 रुपए का कॉफी 5 रुपए में हो जाए तो हम लोग को तो खुशी होना चाहिए ना कि सस्ता हो गया. Because we are buying the coffee. Similarly, if we are net buyers of stocks and if you're going to buy stocks every month, every year, हमें तो खुश होना चाहिए अगर स्टॉक सस्ते में मिल रहे हैं. सो इफ एन एक्सीलेंट क्वालिटी बिजनेस वो अगर सस्ते में खरीदने को मिल रहा है तो खरीदो ना यार, क्या प्रॉब्लम है. एंड सो टू योर जो आपने क्वेश्चन पूछा, डू यू एवरेज डाउन व्हेन इट्स गोइंग डाउन? I do, but only if it's an excellent quality company and a company where I have the conviction that I'm getting a great asset at a much lower price. So yes, there's been many cases where I've actually doubled or tripled my position after it went down.
But typically, if we talk about the valuation concept, so typically valuation has 2 components. One is the value of the business itself, which is the intrinsic value, and the other is a speculative value inside that stock price, which is a function of certain expectation of market from that business. That's why there are some businesses which are trading at a very high multiple because there is more speculative value in those.
Yeah.
Speculation is basically expectation, right? And at times the correction happens when there is a mismatch of expectation. That market was expecting that you will perform this way, but suddenly your performance is not exactly, and there is a big crash, right?
100%, yes.
Do you realign your valuation when there is a speculative value crash? Because there could be a new average, right?
Yes.
I mean, average, let's say PE. I know it's not a great... It's not a greatest tool to talk about valuation, but it's a most commonly understood tool. So let's talk about PE. So suppose a stock, उसका PE हो जाता है 80, जो कि उसका न्यू नॉर्म है कि 80 चलना ही चाहिए वो, right? Why it is 80? Because उसमें speculative value बहुत है, उसमें bubble बहुत है, correct? Suddenly speculative value उसका कम हो जाता है और उसका PE हो जाता है 40.
करेक्ट.
तो आपको तो अंडर वैल्यू दिखने लगेगा कि 80 का पी चल रहा था, अब ये 40 में अवेलेबल है, राइट?
करेक्ट.
सो हाउ डू यू कम आउट विद दैट number, that whether this earning multiple or this valuation is a fair value and offers the maximum?
Yes. I think for that, let's go to one of the next slides.
और मैंने जल्दी का पूछ लिया गया क्वेश्चन?
नहीं, it's a very good time to ask. इसके बाद वाला एक और.
अच्छा, ओके, ठीक है.
एक और बाद, हाँ,
ठीक है.
Yes.
ओए.
So
nice.
Yes, Vivek ji, that's a very, very relevant question. And I think the way I think about it is कि, so I used to play a lot of cricket growing up. And हमारे कोच हमको बोला करते थे कि, तुमको टेम्पटेशन होगा कि आउटसाइड द ऑफ स्टंप वाले बॉल को कवर ड्राइव मार दो या कट कर दो या स्ट्रेट ड्राइव मार दो, बट you can also leave the ball and then you can live another day to play that ball again. I think it's similarly with valuations as well, where you might find an excellent company, say like a very hot company in retail investors' mind in India is a company like CDSL as an example. You can buy CDSL at 50, 60, 70, 80 PE and still make money. It is possible. But what you are doing is you are trying to, hit a cover drive to Brett Lee's ball at 150 kph, where the risk of you getting out is also high.
Okay.
That is exactly how I think, which is that I am only trying to honestly generate not more than 13-14% a year. That's it. I Charlie Munger says keep low expectations. मेरा expectations ये होते हैं कि 12-13-14% fixed deposit rate times 2 plus 2-3 is more than enough for me.
This is in dollar terms.
In Indian markets or US markets.
Indian market में वही 13% रिटर्न. अच्छा आपने एक्सपेक्टेशन को वैसा रख रखा है.
That's all I'm happy with.
ठीक है.
And the way I think is that look, a fixed deposit is giving you 6.5-7%,
ठीक है.
which means it's trading at 15-16 times earnings. Right? If 100 divided by 6.5-7 is about 15-16 times earnings. So you're getting a fixed deposit at 15-16 times earnings. Can we buy excellent businesses and then see how to value them? So one thing that I do is I try to value a stock before looking at the stock price. So it's like if I'm analyzing, say, a company like in this slide, it's a company like, say, IndiaMart. I will try to see IndiaMart ka balance sheet, income statement, qualitatively research it, build a very thorough base, but not look at the market cap.
Okay.
And I will try to come up कि मेरे हिसाब से what should IndiaMart be valued at?
The business in totality?
The business in totality, considering the other investments or whatever or assets they have.
Okay.
Then I try to see, okay, when I have come at a certain market cap, कि with a margin of safety, this is a market cap I want. Then I try to see, okay, what is the stock price actually like?
Okay.
And then a lot of times the stock price market cap is very, very deviated from what I agree on. Right? Then I try to see, okay, the question I ask myself, and I think every retail investor or serious investor should ask themselves is, why should you give a high multiple or why should you give a low multiple to a certain stock?
Okay.
And that is where there are certain factors that I carefully look at. So the first thing is, revenue growth and operating margins. अगर कोई कंपनी का low growth है, low operating margin है, आप उसको high P multiple please मत दीजिए. क्योंकि अगर आप देंगे, आप downside protection, you are not factoring that in, you can seriously burn your hands. But if a company is growing at 20, 25, 30%, of course it deserves a high multiple. And then your job as a fund manager is to see how sustainable and deep is that growth.
Okay.
Similarly, I would also say that companies that are in industries that are very stable, you should also be comfortable giving them a higher PE. Right? Or companies which have revenue stickiness. As an example, like this is a case of the US, but in US you will find that there are many solid enterprise software companies. They are so critical to their customers that their customers will not rip them out for the next 5 years or 10 years. So when a company knows that my revenues are very stable and growing, you as an investor can underwrite a much higher multiple for that. So one example, let's take an example from the slide. So a company like Indian Energy Exchange, I think it's a very controversial company and a lot of people have very differing opinions on it. That's why I've picked this stock to talk about as an example. So Indian Energy Exchange is firstly extremely capital light. It has very high operating margins and revenue growth is, typically in the mid-teens. For a company like that, let's run a thought experiment. If you get a company like that at 15 times earnings, 1.5, is it cheap or expensive? I think it's extremely cheap. If you get a company like that at 20 times earnings, is it cheap or expensive? I still think it's very cheap. Why? Because revenue growth is decent, very high profit margins, and it's a monopoly business, which is very capital light. So for a company like Indian Energy Exchange, I'm willing to even pay a 30 times earnings as an example. Now, a lot of people in the video will say कि अरे power decoupling है, ये है, वो है. This is where I think your qualitative research really comes into play. And I focus a lot on qualitative research, where I have spoken to multiple officials and people who are in discoms and who are in the power ecosystem. And what they have consistently told me is that IEX adds so much value. IEX does such a great job for them that it will be very disruptive to the power market if IEX goes away. And IEX ka software and their capabilities are so advanced that it will be very difficult for a second or third player to come in there. So हाँ, मतलब power ministry में कोई joint secretary, additional secretary या secretary change हो गया, they will make a comment कि okay, IEX this, IEX that. But in the long arc and in the long term, markets and ecosystem players and the business will converge to what the true value is. And there, these things will not really matter. So that's why you've seen even recently, IEX has run up because the market is realizing that this power decoupling thing is not going to be much of an issue. Whereas, अगर आप मुझे बोलो कि एक स्टील कंपनी है जिसका बहुत हैवी कैपेक्स है, margins are like 5-6%, and you ask me to pay 20 times earnings, I will not want to pay that. And again, there is no formulaic approach I take. It's very subjective. And I think that is the beauty of valuations and investing, is that every day you get to buy the stock at a certain P, at a certain valuation. And you develop your own subjective heuristics ki, okay, a very capital intensive, low margin, low revenue growth steel company, should you pay 20-25 times earnings when you're getting equivalent capital light, excellent businesses at that PE? Right? So that is how I broadly think about valuations as well. And last thing I would say, Vivek ji, over here is the only macroeconomic factor you should consider in investing, and this I'm saying as somebody who has a deep macro background, is the interest rate. So even Buffett says that interest rates are basically gravity. Interest rates जब ज़्यादा है, gravity बहुत तेज है, वो stocks और बाजार को नीचे लेके आता है. When interest rates are lower, that gives an elevation to stocks. And every macro factor that you think of, whether it's tariffs, it's inflation, it's exchange rates, it's monetary policy, fiscal deficit, try to see what is the impact of that macro factor on the interest rate, on the underlying real rate of interest. And from that, then you should make an assessment of, okay, this will have an impact on valuations, or this will have an impact on stocks in a certain way. Because if interest rates impact the business, that is very fundamental to a lot of businesses. The debt they take, or the rate at which they can raise money from external investors, or how they should also evaluate their own internal cash flow. So when interest rates are high and I'm a cash generating business, it's a higher opportunity cost for me. So I can't just spend the money in random things. I have to be very selective about where I'm using it for acquisitions or buybacks or dividends or reinvesting back in the business. So macro mein, I would say ki interest rates are very important and they should factor in your valuations as well.
And different sectors will have a different impact of interest rates. Correct. So valuation of each sector will be unique, right? Depending upon the interest rate scenario.
Yes. That is a very good point. And exactly. So that
जैसे अभी falling interest rate scenario चालू हो गया
इंडिया में, हाँ,
US के अंदर में भी
No, वहाँ पर तो नहीं, हाँ, इंडिया में yes.
इंडिया में अब बात हो रही है कि कब है, sorry to interrupt you. तो there will be certain sectors which will be beneficiary of falling interest rates, right?
100%.
तो उन sectors में there will be PE re-rating practically
100%
because of the interest rate factor, correct?
Yes.
Okay. yes. क्योंकि उनके business में earning growth भी होगी, साथ में उनका PE expansion भी ज़्यादा होगा because of falling interest rate scenario. Is it right?
Yes, and the other thing is also that you also have to see a lot of businesses also hold a lot of cash or hold a lot of debt.
Correct.
So interest rates for those companies उनको और ज़्यादा impact करेगा. So as an example, if you're a bank or you're an insurance company and interest rates rise, you will actually benefit because now your reserves are earning a higher yield. Or if you're a company like let's take an example of ITC. ITC has a lot of cash reserves. High interest rates will help them. Low interest rates might not help them, but it may help them that consumers will spend more when interest rates are lower. I think the point I'm trying to make is कि macro ऐसा चीज है, of course, like the more you analyze, there are second, third, fourth order effects. But a good quality business will not get affected by macro that much. And the only macro factor you should think about is the interest rate.
Okay.
Yeah.
एक आपका slide में दिख रहा है point, debt is problematic, redundant cash is good. What is redundant cash?
Yes. So I think this is something I love when I look at companies, is when a company has a lot of cash reserves. So they have good cash in the bank, they have a lot of financial investments. And this, I think, is a more subjective assessment of mine, where I feel that today's business world is so dynamic. The barrier to entry on starting a business is getting lower and lower. People are getting more inspired by being startup entrepreneurs, right? That as a business, if you have cash, you just have more flexibility कि आप, वो cash को बहुत सारे opportunities में deploy कर सकते हो. So if you are a business and you're sitting on cash, you have that optionality, or you have that, in poker parlance, you have that ace up your sleeve where कल को अगर आपको एक business opportunity दिख गया or another competitor is struggling a little bit, you can use your cash effectively to maybe keep prices lower than your competitor. You can use your cash opportunistically to buy another asset, buy another business line, buy back your shares, whatever. So I like the fact that any company I'm investing in has cash reserves. I know that, okay, they have some optionality, they have some, counter to margin of safety, they have some margin of expansion when they have a lot of cash in the balance sheet.
Fair point.
One, isme, Vivek ji, an example I'll give, which I've seen in US a lot, is that a lot of solid technology companies in the US, they have similar exact cash reserves in their balance sheet equal to 1 year of revenues. And this is something that Bill Gates actually used to talk about, that I want to have 1 year jitna revenue as cash in the bank. So the entrepreneur is less stressed out. They can make more calculative long-term bets with the cash they have, right? I talk to a lot of company managements here in India as well, and they tell that they get pressure कि आपका जो cash है balance sheet में आप कुछ करिए उसका. A lot of analysts are asking them on earnings calls that why don't you do something with this cash? But I tell them कि boss, keep the cash you have and only deploy it for the highest use case. No problem. I like that as an investor.
Interesting.
I think Vivek ji, another thing that I love doing as an investor is trying to identify fake corrections or fake crisis.
Okay.
And figuring out when a fake crisis is happening and not a real crisis.
Okay.
So I'll give you two examples, one from India and one from the US, where I feel that, and again, this is a little cocky of me to say, but what I try to see is that अगर कोई company या कोई sector बहुत जोर से गिरा है, I try to analyze that, is this permanent and long term, or is this very shallow and more sentimental? So as an example, Manappuram stock very recently was trading at around 200 rupees a share. And I think they had one bad earnings call and the stock fell from around 200 to about 140. In my business analysis, because I was tracking that company for 1 to 2 years before that and I was studying it, what I realized is that the market is definitely overreacting here. Because what happened is that at the same time, gold prices had risen up a lot. In my humble judgment, I felt that the market is not realizing that Manappuram will actually benefit agar uske borrowers default kare, because it might get to keep that gold that they have in collateral. So they would actually benefit from the high gold prices if borrowers default. And you had issues in the microfinance sector and company specific issues, but I felt that this is more of an overreaction and a fake crisis and not a real crisis.
Interesting.
Second example I'll give from the US is, and I can attest to this as a macroeconomist, is that what happened is, if you realize 2022 May, everybody in the US was like recession, the Fed has raised interest rates. I ask all of your viewers, go to any news outlet or a media channel and see what they were saying in 2022. A lot of people are talking about recession. No recession happened, right? Similarly, in 2023, March, when Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank collapsed in the US, pura CNBC and all these guys ne halla macha diya tha ki arey banking stocks are fragile, there's going to be a banking crisis. When all many regional bank stocks and banking stocks in the US took a nosedive. In that scenario, I asked myself, firstly, you have to figure out, is this going to be a real crisis or not? And in my assessment, it was not. How did I go about analyzing that? I saw ki in the banking system, right, how are 5-year and 10-year government yields and banking yields behaving for these stocks compared to what the market is saying. So I've come to see over time that the bond markets are a good place to see if a crisis is actually happening or not, because जो लोग कर्जा देते हैं companies को, they are very, very sharp on predicting risk and understanding risk. So anyway, I saw that none of the 10-year or 5-year yields on these companies' bonds was drastically going up. And I also crunched a few numbers and saw that this crisis of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank is very, very localized. It's not going to spread in the banking system. What happened is there was a company called East West Bank. After Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, it became the largest bank in California. And unka agar aap earnings call sunte, they were saying this is the best time for us. Our two biggest competitors are gone. We are having a great time. And the stock fell from $83, $82 to $45 within a period of 1 month. 45% net income margins, growing at 5-6%, very conservative lender, excellent capital controls. And I felt it was around 5 or 6 times earnings. And I felt this is a great opportunity to buy. And ye Silicon Valley Bank and jo media crisis bol rahi, ye kuch crisis hai nahi. They are English journalists who don't really understand about the economy. Not to sound cocky, but I knew that was a great time to buy. I bought a lot of East West Bank at $45, and today it's like at $110. And I haven't sold a single share because it's a great company, and I would have loved to invest in it, but I was just maybe hunting for the right price. So what I'm trying to say is that to your viewers as well is that the next time you see any big drop, okay, it can mean two things. It can mean ki there is a real crisis happening, or it can mean that it's a great buying opportunity and the market is overreacting. If you at that point in time can go deep and analyze ki which of the two is this scenario, there is good money to be made. Again, provided that you are hopefully only looking at excellent quality businesses and not mediocre businesses.
Interesting. ये fake crisis ये आपने निकाला ये word, या is it a standard usage, fake crisis?
मैं तो ऐसे ही बोल रहा हूँ, मतलब I don't think it's a word.
It's a good usage, huh? Fake crisis. I'm going to use it more often. Good,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and again, if you see over here as well, what I was saying is that with Manappuram, there were RBI restrictions. They didn't have a good earnings call. Even in the case of India Mart, like I think the share price fell recently from about 2,500 to 1,900. Great time to buy, and the stock is again up. So isme, the way you have to play is that you have to build knowledge in these companies. क्योंकि जब मार्केट या उनका स्टॉक क्रैश करेगा, यू शुड हैव द कॉन्फिडेंस टू देन गो एंड पिक इट अप. एंड वो आपको कन्विक्शन एंड कॉन्फिडेंस तभी आएगा व्हेन यू हैव गुड नॉलेज of these businesses, their business models, their underlying numbers, etc. Yeah.
Fair point.
Vivek ji, another thing I wanted to also really talk about, and I feel it's made a big difference to my investing philosophy, is applying learnings from US markets to Indian markets. And there are basically 3 broad ways that I categorize this. The first is that the US is a very, very developed economy. It's the largest economy in the world. A lot of sectors have matured there. And usse hota kya hai ki you can get to see which sectors or which types of companies have been compounders. And a country like India, which is in its development ascent and in its high growth journey, you can get some sense that if the business models are similar, if the industry structure is similar, then in sectors में भी हमको compounders मिल सकते हैं. So as an example, in the US, a lot of the data providers as well as the rating agencies have been fantastic compounders. So in the US, if you look at a company like FactSet or MSCI, S&P, Moody's, the rating agencies, their stocks have beautifully compounded in the long term. So the question I ask myself is that in India, will there be data companies? And if there are data companies and there's a similar industrial structure yahan pe, there is no reason why they will also not be compounders. And of course, it's a very broad sweeping statement to make, but it gives you some confidence that this is a sector you should astutely look at because yahan pe similarities ho sakti hai. That's why in India, as an example, I love the rating agencies because they are doing exactly the work that rating agencies in the US have done. Similar number of industry players, similar corporate setup, similar fee structures, fee models. So there's you can say with reasonable safety that rating agencies may also be compounders in India. And again, very capital light, high profit margins, decent revenue growth. And they're really benefiting from the financialization of India's economy. Because a lot of people, when they say financialization of savings in India, it's a very common term. They focus more on the consumer side, but not so much on the B2B or the industrial side where rating agencies are there. Another example that I see in the US is उन companies को पकड़ो who are critical suppliers or vendors of other large compounders. So an example would be, if you look at Nvidia or if you look at Google, both of them really rely on a company called Cadence Design Systems to make their chips.
True.
So Nvidia cannot function without Cadence today.
Achha.
If Cadence stops supplying them more and more software, Cadence ke engineers will not be able to design those chips. So if Cadence is going to grow, if Nvidia is going to grow or Google is going to grow, their critical suppliers and vendors will also grow and have pricing power. So in India as well, I'm trying to see who are the critical suppliers of other compounding stocks. That's a heuristic I'm using. And the last thing I would say over here is try to look for a certain type of moat called scaled economies shared. So scaled economy shared क्या होता है विवेक जी कि ये US में अगर आप कोई US fund manager को बोलोगे scaled economy shared, they'll be like, यार I've heard this term a lot, like don't tell it to me again. But what it basically means is that an excellent company is making profits, is making revenues, it passes on that benefit to the customer back. A great example is a company like Costco. Costco is basically a huge retailer of home goods and a lot of other electronic goods in the US. What they do is, Costco जो भी revenue कमाता है, profit कमाता है, they try to keep lowering prices every year for customers. Customers become happy. They come again to Costco. They spend more. It's like a flywheel that keeps happening. आप Amazon में shopping किए US में, Amazon delivers lower prices to you every year on year, or similar prices benchmark to inflation. You as a customer feel happy. You again come back to it. You spend money, and Amazon continues that flywheel. So in India as well, given that we're a nation of 1.5 billion people and there's a lot of scale, I also try to look for businesses that may have this scaled economies shared moat where they continue to add value to customers through lower prices, better features at similar prices, and the flywheel keeps continuing. That has been a great recipe to finding compounders.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. तो ये ज़रूरी है कि वो टेक कंपनीज ही होंगी, प्रोडक्ट कंपनी भी हो सकती है ना, जैसे डीमार्ट है.
Yes.
क्लासिक केस स्टडी है कि because of economies of scale they enjoy better deals with their suppliers and they pass on the benefits to the customers.
Exactly.
That's how they have been able to scale up.
Yes. So it doesn't have to be a tech company. It can be a product company. It can be a commodity company. Commodity company के case में hard है, but it can be any type of company.
Okay.
As long as they are focused on delivering value to their customers, their vendors, their suppliers, and the ecosystem in which they're operating in. And that increases the stickiness of the customers or the vendors, and they keep coming back to them, and they're able to continue that flywheel. Yeah, it can be any type of company.
You like financials, huh?
Yes.
Well-run financials. अब आपकी बात से लग रहा है कि you like to invest in financials. But बहुत commoditized business नहीं है financials का. पैसा लेना है और lend कर देना है और risk manage करना है.
Yes.
तो इसमें unique क्या होता है financials में? अलग-अलग companies के अलग-अलग uniqueness क्या है?
Correct. So, Vivek ji, I love financials because of two reasons. The first is because a lot of people don't like it.
Right.
So, when a lot of people don't like a particular sector or they have a certain preconception of that sector, it means that there might not be as much competition in that sector in terms of purely stock pickers and investors.
Okay.
The second reason I feel is that it comes naturally to me. Like, I don't know ये मारवाड़ी blood है या क्या है, but I think money lending बोलिए, insurance बोलिए, it comes naturally to me. And it is a commoditized business, yes, but it's also in some ways not a commoditized business. So I'll give you an example. In the US, if you go, you will find more than 1,000 licensed banks. Yes. There are more than 1,000 licensed banks in the US. It's not just the Goldmans and the JP Morgans. ऐसे ऐसे बैंक्स हैं विच आर बिगर देन मैनी बैंक्स हियर इन इंडिया जिनका नाम हम लोगों ने कभी सुना ही नहीं होगा. With that context, having lived in the US and having seen कि there are so many banks over there, then when I come to India and I see कि यार यहाँ तो banks है ही नहीं. Government does not give banking licenses very easily. We are a very credit hungry country, but the supply of credit is very, very limited. That is why if you see in India, an excellent, well-run financial company like Bajaj Finance, you see the margins it's making. It's obscene to make those margins as a financial company. US में you'll find very rare types of banks that are making those types of margins. Another example that I also remember is Bandhan Bank. I think was probably, I may be wrong factually thoda sa in this, but I remember Bandhan Bank was one of the more recent banks which got a banking license. And that has been more than 10 years. And I remember in the first 2 years itself, they crossed more than 20,000 crores in deposits. What does that tell you? That tells you that in India, there need to be 10 times more number of banks because we are a very credit hungry country. And sure, it is on paper, yes, commoditized है. आप पैसा ले रहे हो, आप पैसा दे रहे हो, and वो पैसा आप कहीं से भी ले सकते हो. But उसमें there is a art on underwriting the risk, making sure you are, you're protecting your balance sheet. आपका provisioning is aggressive or not. There are a lot of these nuances which I like in banking. Banking में हाँ एक ही problem होता है कि it is a cyclical industry and accounting statements are very complicated to read. But so far, like the banking stocks that I have liked and that I have invested in have worked out very well for me. And I don't shy away from financials. I try to see in a bank ki, are they conservative? Are they investing in technology? For example, in the second week of February, Vivek ji, I got to meet Mr. V. Vaidyanathan of IDFC First Bank. And he told me that they are, he spends, more than 50% of his time in just technology, in just enabling better customer experience. And he said that, I want to be the Bajaj Finance of retail banking and retail lending in the banking sector. And, they are excellent at risk management, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel it's a good bank. And banking in generally grows with GDP, with velocity of money, with the money supply. Banking also naturally grows. So therefore, I feel like I have no problem with financials. I really like them a lot. And I love the fact that many people are scared of financials.
Okay. Fair point. आगे बढ़ते हैं.
Yeah. I think last 2 slides or last 2 things I would say, and the other things I've obviously covered well.
Yeah.
I think another thing that people can really apply from US markets to India markets is the intensity of how technology is penetrating the economy. So अगर आप 20 साल पहले देखो, technology as a weightage in the S&P or the Dow Jones or the Nasdaq was not that much.
Right.
Over the years, the weightage of technology has become to such an extent that today the Mag 7 stocks, right? आपका Amazon, Alphabet, ये सब type का stocks, Nvidia, Apple, they are more than 25% of the market cap. India, maybe if you see, Zomato has now come into the Nifty, right? And my thesis is that as technology penetrates our lives more and more, markets are a reflection of society. Markets will also reflect what is actually happening in the underlying economy, and more technology stocks are going to become mainstream in India. They are not so much right now, but वो होने वाला है. And if you see the IPO book of this coming year in Indian markets, there are many software companies lined up. But software companies have artificially depressed profits.
Okay.
And as a retail investor or as a serious investor, you'll find that if you look at a lot of these tech companies in US and in India, unka P ratio will be like 100, 150. They will not be making any profits. And you're like, yaar, ye to bahut paisa lose kar raha hai. But you have to think in a second order way in that. And that is something I am trying to build an edge on. And I feel investors should try to build an edge on is how do you value a tech company? So I'll give you a very simple example, Vivek ji. So imagine that you are a company that manufactures something. You manufacture maybe footwear as an example. And आप एक factory खड़ा करते हो. Usually क्या होता है कि कोई company अगर factory खड़ा करता है, वो सारा का सारा cost of that factory एक ही साल में expense out नहीं करता है. वो उसको बैलेंस शीट में डालेगा, फिर बैलेंस शीट से उसको वो डेप्रिशिएट करेगा एंड डेप्रिशिएटेड अमाउंट विल कम टू द इनकम स्टेटमेंट. In the case of software companies, what happens is that they are not setting up any factories. They have basically developers who are coding things, and that whatever they are coding sits on the tech stack of that company for 5 to 10 years, at least say 3 to 4 years. So it's similar to a factory, but for a tech company. लेकिन Indian accounting standards, Rule 38 and GAAP accounting standards don't give that flexibility that these software companies can take all that developer cost, put it on the balance sheet and उसको फिर amortize करे. As a result, these software companies have to expense out everything in 1 year. तो उनका जो कोडर कोड कर रहा है, जो 4-5 साल तक कंपनी को फायदा होने वाला है, it artificially gets expensed out in 1 year.
But that is more valid for a product company, tech product company.
Yes.
सर्विस कंपनी के साथ ये नहीं होगा.
हाँ, not with service companies, but I mean pure play software companies which have 70-80% gross margins, or product companies. Yes, for them.
तो इसका मतलब हम टेक, ऐसे तो टेक को बहुत ही ब्रॉड यूज कर लिया हमने, पर उसमें भी देखना पड़ेगा कि वो जो कंपनी है जिसका हम एनालिसिस कर रहे हैं वो सर्विस में ज्यादा है कि उसका कोई प्रोडक्ट है.
हाँ, I am focusing more on the pure play product company. Yes.
जैसे Zomato is a product company.
Zomato is a product company.
Okay.
It's a pure play tech company.
Okay.
So you can be either a product company, or the other way to see is how capital light is this company. So if you look at the retained earnings or stockholders equity in that company, and it is, revenue divided by capital is not as low compared to a pure play like industrial company, then it's a relatively light company. Basically कि अगर आप X capital लगा रहे हो and you're getting a very high proportion of that back in revenue every year, it's a relatively capital light company.
Got it.
And software companies will be like that. And the reason I'm saying this is that as investors, this is a market reality we will have to face in the next 10-15 years, is that I'm 100% sure that India का Nifty 50 भी and Indian markets भी will get more and more dominated, or at least much more mainstream than what it is today, with these pure play software product capital light tech companies.
Okay.
And as investors, we have to know how to value them appropriately. So आप ऐसे मत देखिए कि उसका यार प्रॉफिट्स बहुत ही आर्टिफिशियली डिप्रेस्ड है, या उसका पी रेशियो बहुत हाई है इसलिए बिकॉज द अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड्स एंड अकाउंटिंग रूल्स डू नॉट अलाउ इट टू कैपिटलाइज दैट कॉस्ट. उसको एक ही साल में सारा एक्सपेंस आउट करना पड़ रहा है. तो आप उसको मे बी ऐसे सोचिए कि उसके पास कम से कम 10-15-20% अर्निंग्स पावर या मार्जिन है, एंड उसको भी एनालाइज करने का देयर इज अ वेरी सटल आर्ट. यू हैव टू सी रेवेन्यू स्टिकीनेस, यू हैव टू सी नेट रिटेंशन रेट, यू हैव टू सी रेवेन्यू ग्रोथ. So I'll take another US example. There's a company called Cadence Design Systems, right, which I spoke about. That company makes a 30% operating margin even after spending 40% on R&D. Yes.
Nice. 40% of the revenue
on R&D.
Oh my God.
हर साल खर्चा करता है, उसके बाद भी 30% मार्जिन है. वो स्टॉक का पी रेशियो फॉर द लास्ट 10-15 years has always been between 60 and 70, but it has still compounded. Why? Because जो वो 40% R&D में लगा रहा है, that should not ideally be expensed out in that year. So the way I calculate for Cadence is कि 40% जो R&D है, half of that you can easily flow back to the profits and the earnings. So the operating margin goes from 30% to maybe 50 or 55%. Then the P ratio जो optically आपको 66 या 60 जितना दिख रहा है, it becomes more like 30 or 35. Then आपको लगेगा कि it's a cheaper company, and you'll have more confidence buying it. So the point I'm trying to make is tech companies are a different beast in terms of accounting, and you have to get used to it more and more, because इंडिया में भी, जैसे यूएस में ऑलरेडी हो चुका है, इंडिया में भी इसकी प्रवृत्ति और ज़्यादा बढ़ते रहेगी, एंड वी हैव टू बी अवेयर ऑफ इट.
इंडिया के अंदर में जो ब्रांड है, जो गुडविल है, उसको अकाउंटिंग नहीं करते हैं जनरली, राइट? यूएस के अंदर में दे डू दैट, क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली से फॉर एग्जांपल जोमेटो है. अब देखा जाए तो जोमेटो का जो वेबसाइट है या जो प्लेटफॉर्म है, उसका वैल्यू और जोमेटो ब्रांड जो बना है उसका वैल्यू, ये दोनों वैल्यू मिला के ही तो एक टेक का वैल्यू है, राइट?
करेक्ट.
सम इज क्लियरली आइडेंटिफाइबल कि इतने लोगों ने इतने लोग ने बना के टेक्नोलॉजी बनाया है तो वो कैपिटलाइज कर दो, बट जो ब्रांड का खर्चा है विच इज बेसिकली द मार्केटिंग एक्सपेंसेस,
यस
तो यूएस के अंदर में मार्केटिंग एक्सपेंसेस को भी कैपिटलाइज किया जाता है?
नहीं, they also expense everything out in 1 year.
और यूएस में भी वही कॉन्सेप्ट है?
Yes. So if you look at a company like Airbnb, fantastic brand, all of us have probably used it. They spend, more than $500 million a year on just branding and marketing.
Right.
And they put everything in the income statement for that year. But that brand is a brand that will help them in the next 4-5 years. Consumer ke mind mein, you are building that brand, and that brand is a little bit sticky, right? So it has it has a long tenure effect, but you are forcing to expense it in that year itself.
तो इंडिया में अकाउंटिंग प्रैक्टिस और यूएस अकाउंटिंग प्रैक्टिस सिमिलर है, इसका मतलब?
I'm not, Vivek ji, an expert in accounting. I have just focused on accounting from a technology company perspective. But yeah, there are many investors who will be much better at me than accounting. And that's one thing I am working on to improve as a skill.
Sure. Yeah. Fair point. आगे बढ़ते.
Yeah. Vivek ji, another thing that I try to do as an investor, and this I think has come from my UPSC learnings and IAS wale days, ki I try to read a lot about current affairs and different subjects, history, geography, constitution, science and technology, etc. And I try to see, I don't try to look for sectors. I try to look for super cycles.
Okay.
Because the super cycle will have an effect on multiple sectors. So an example I'll give you is India's financial integration. Let's pick that example. Again, this is a perspective you will not likely have if you're only exposed to Indian markets, but India's financial system and India's financial sector is actually one of the least open and most closed and least integrated with global markets. If you look at 2008 financial crisis or other crises that have happened across the world, why don't Indian markets get affected? They don't get affected because India का जो financial system है, जो RBI का monetary policy है, जो हमारे capital controls है on the balance of payment side, they are not as well connected with global financial markets. In trade, in immigration flows, we are very connected to the world. But India's financial system is very, very autarkic. That's the technical term in economics. It's very closed off from the world. अब ये धीरे धीरे ओपन अप हो रहा है with Gift City, with more and more HNIs moving to Dubai or the US as an example. India's financial sector is opening up. Now this is a massive super cycle which is happening, and how can we benefit from this? This super cycle will enable us to identify multiple sectors through which we can profit from. The best way that you can play this super cycle is to see which sectors of the economy are going to benefit from this opening up of India's financial sectors. One is easily wealth and asset management, right? More and more wealth managers from America, from Europe are coming to India, setting up shop. They are aggressively selling to the Indian population. Aggressive sales will lead to some sales, which means more and more people get comfortable investing in equities as an example. So wealth management as a sector you can identify purely from this super cycle.
Okay.
Another is that more and more Indian companies are now tapping the bond markets and taking on debt, and India's bond markets are becoming more integrated with global bond markets. And when I was at the IMF, we had a lot of research on this which showed that India's bond markets, equity markets, government bond markets are opening up more to the world. Which means कि आज अगर आप एक कंपनी हो, 10 साल पहले आप बॉन्ड मार्केट को मे बी उतना सीरियसली नहीं लेते थे कि इससे पैसा उठाते हैं. टुडे यू आर टेकिंग इट मोर सीरियसली. इससे किसको फायदा होगा? हु आर द टोल बूथ्स, हु आर द ब्रोकर्स ओवर हियर? द रेटिंग एजेंसीज, राइट? रेटिंग एजेंसीज आर अ ग्रेट प्ले ओवर हियर. सो आई फील what I would try to tell viewers is don't think कि एक sector पकड़ो. Try to identify super cycles and then you can narrow down some sectors from there. Another example I'll take is global capability centers.
Okay.
India mein, if you go to Hyderabad, Bangalore, Pune, there are many global capability centers opening up. Amazon, JP Morgan, they have their largest offices in India. And I have many friends who work there, and it is very similar to what, how US companies outsourced manufacturing to China in the 1990s. US companies are now outsourcing core technology, operations, and implementation to India. And AI will be an even big enabler. I have a very good friend. He's an engineer at Goldman Sachs in the Hyderabad office, and he is leading their AI implementation. And अब इससे global capability center से main क्या हो रहा है कि there are tens of lakhs and crores of people who are for the first time en masse earning a salary of starting 7-8 lakhs going up to 20, 25, 30 lakhs. This I think is very powerful and structural, and these global capability centers, they are very long term investments. If a JP Morgan buys land in Bandra Kurla, sets up an office, it's taking a 20-25 year bet or at least a 10-year bet कि we will invest in India and pay those good salaries to people. Now how do you play global capability centers? If tens of lakhs of young people are making this type of salary and unka cost of living utna high nahi hai, they will consume more aspirational products. So global capability centers gives a very good thesis for premiumization of consumption. India mein we hear a lot of fund managers say aspirational consumption, premiumization of consumption, but uska thesis for me is not just udyogpati or businessmen becoming more and more wealthy, but it's also these global capability centers. So global capability centers se ye bhi ho raha hai ki these people are now wanting to travel more abroad. So aviation will be interesting, travel will be interesting, visa services might be interesting, luxury watches ho gaya, ya any premium type of consumption will structurally and if they're even more concentrated in these regions where these global capability centers are coming, it's a good sector pick. So all I'm trying to say is that sector ko mat choose kijiye, try to identify a super cycle that's happening, and from that super cycle you will get 2, 3, 4 different sectors which you can play on. And this is again my bias as an economist, because I have the training as an economist, so I am used to thinking this way, which is what are massive structural shifts happening in society and how do we profit off of that as an investor.
Super. Vatsal, good fun. Maza aaya. Let me just give you a feedback ki you are naturally gifted as a teacher.
Okay.
आपके समझाने का तरीका बहुत अच्छा है, and I think maybe because you exactly know what you are doing, so that's why the way you are explaining to me is also very, very clear. So thank you for this short video, 1 hour interaction, but very effectful. And I wish you best of luck.
Thank you.
कि आप और ग्रो करिए और जल्दी जल्दी इंडिया में भी फंड लॉन्च करिए अपना, और यहाँ पर भी आके अपना बेस बनाइए.
एकदम. Thank you so much, Vivek ji, for giving me this opportunity, and you are a very big inspiration, and please continue doing what you are doing. You are changing many lives, and thank you for having me on this podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So alright दोस्तों, ये था एक छोटा सा वीडियो वत्सल के साथ. मोर देन एनीथिंग एल्स आई थिंक लर्निंग तो हमको मिली है, और काफ़ी अच्छी कुछ बातें मुझे भी अच्छी यूनिक लगी इनके साथ डिस्कशन में, पर इंस्पिरेशन बहुत मिल गया कि यार 28 साल का है, ज़्यादा नहीं है बड़ा, बट यस ही हैज़ सो मच ऑफ क्लैरिटी इन व्हाट ही इज़ डूइंग. सो आई थिंक वी ऑल कैन एस्पायर टू डू समथिंग इन दिस डोमेन ऑफ इन्वेस्टिंग विद सच अ स्ट्रॉन्ग क्लैरिटी. ऑलराइट, आप करेंगे ना? Thank you for staying till the end. It's important to see the video fully to absorb it. Do comment. इस वीडियो के नीचे में कमेंट लिखिएगा कि आपको पसंद आया क्या ये, and if you like it, just mention that yes, I like it. I'll figure out whether Vatsal has any social media presence or not. If he has, I'll mention this below the video ताकि आप इनके साथ कनेक्ट कर सकते हैं. Alright, thank you, bye, take care, जय हिंद.
Investment in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.